In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Happy birthday!
Yay!
It's Farz's
39 years
birthday.
old. Yes, I'm 39.
Congratulations.
39 years young. I look 25 though, according to most people.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very young. Fresh face.
Yeah.
Bunny-tailed.
I that's what I hear about you all the time. Hey, is that Farz guy even old enough to have a job?
There you go.
He's so young looking.
They literally ID me when I try to rent cars. That's how young I look. So just follow Doom to Fail for more advice on how to look young forever, like me. Which leads us into the Doom to Fail part. Before I ask how you're doing, Taylor, welcome to Doom to Fail, the podcast where we cover a historic and or true crime situation twice a week that is doomed to fail. Did I?
You did it.
I somehow muddled my way through it.
I might be listening because I'm trying to find a background for this Zoom call. Got one. Okay. Continue.
Taylor, what's going on with you?
I want to look like I'm at a party.
Yeah, look at that.
Woohoo! No one can see this, and it looks terrible. Oh my God. Okay. Forget that. Turn it off. So it is. What'd you ask me? I'm doing great. Oh my God, this is my problem. Here we go. I hadn't checked to touch up my appearance block on Zoom. Now I did that. Now I feel better. Anyway, I'm good. I've been awake for a very long time, which is very rare in this household. But yesterday we went to. Oh my God, soccer game started at freaking 8 a.m, and I was mad. I was like, this sucks. It was hot. I had a heat rash. I was like, this is terrible. And then we went to a birthday party at a trampoline park indoor place that was hot as balls. It was in Palm Desert. It was like 112 outside. It was not much cooler inside the place. Everyone was like soaking wet. I didn't even jump. I was just like hot for being there. So we got home and anyway, we all went to bed at like 8:30, like with the lights on.
When did you wake up?
6:30. It was weird.
Yikes.
So the kids have been up, and then I was like, I set my alarm for 6:30 anyway because I hadn't written anything for today yet. So I was like, I have to write it. So I spent a couple hours this morning writing.
Nice.
Yes.
I was in your state. I was in LA last week, and I have to say that the hurricane was probably the most overblown thing It was incredible. It was the best time to be in LA. It was absolutely stunning. So everything's fine. Although the earthquake probably did suck a little bit, but the hurricane itself probably freshened up the air quite a bit. So
yeah, I think that is a good point because I was in LA the week before, and you can see the fucking smog cloud from like 50 miles away. Like you see it descending on LA. It's covered in smog. And then also one thing that I remember from when I moved from New York to LA being like, in New York, yes, people pee on the street, but it rains all the time. In LA, people pee on the street and it never fucking rains. It's just disgusting, so it needs a shower.
I actually, because for context, me and Taylor used to live in LA. I used to live in downtown LA for a brief period of time, which is where all the urine smell is. And so while I was at this conference, I was just talking about how great it was that the storm showed up, the hurricane, whatever you want to call it, because it washed away all the piss in downtown. And everybody was looking at me like, you realize that you're like a professional work conference, right? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I shouldn't be talking about piss stains and piss odor at a work conference. But that is 100% true. It washed it away and it smelled fantastic.
If you want to move to downtown LA, give me a call. I will talk you out of it because I'm always right when I talk people out of it.
That is true. That is true.
Or when people do it and they're like, I shouldn't have done it. And I was like, oh, remember when I told you not to do it?
I mean, I did it out of desperation. I really had nowhere to go.
God, and I knew someone who I worked with at that time when you lived in that building, and she was always like, I live in downtown LA in the coolest neighborhood. It is so cool and so fun. And I found out she lived in your building, and I was like, I follow Fars on that Citizen app, and there is a murder underneath Farz's apartment like every other day. I was like, you do not live in the nicest neighborhood. What's wrong with you?
Every morning, there was like several people with heroin needles stuck out of their arms, passed out in the front of the building. It was definitely not a nice neighborhood.
That 7-Eleven was always getting robbed.
That 7-Eleven was always getting robbed. And also, it actually, like, so that friend was trying to be fancier than the truth because that was
Yeah,
technically Westfield. It was not actually
I know.
down.
I was like, girl, you were a liar. I can't, I don't even understand.
Yeah, yeah. You're flexing on the wrong thing. This is not something to flex on.
Exactly. Exactly. But she moved and hopefully she's happy where she lives now and safer because it's not safe there. And hopefully it gets better, like everything.
Like
It's
everything. So, Taylor, what are we today? You go first, I believe, right?
I do. So tell me
Okay.
what you're drinking, my friend,
I'm
on
drinking
your
a protein
birthday.
shake. I'm drinking a protein
That's
shake
so
because
dumb. It is your birthday. Do
no,
something
because
better.
I'm going. So okay. So the new Mrs. Fars picked a. I asked for a place that has like really good espresso martinis, and so she
Okay,
picked a really good espresso martini place because she's actually like kind of local here, and so we're going to that in like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and
fine.
so I did my yoga in the morning, and now I'm having this because that's how I stay looking young.
All right, old man.
Thank you.
Fine.
You know what's funny, Taylor? I had breakfast with our former CEO in LA last week,
Hmm. Hmm.
and somehow we ended up on our age and everything else. And you know how like she's generally like a very very sweet and nice person, and we're talking about our age, and I go, yeah, I mean, do I look like I'm about to turn 39? She's like, yeah, I can see it. I was like, shit.
Nothing, 39 is young. Nothing's wrong with it. 39 is the new, I don't know. Ew, don't want, who wants to be in their 20s again? You're fine.
I literally have the health exam results of my life insurance policy on this other window right now. So yeah,
Look at
being
you.
39 is great.
You own your house.
I
You've,
mean
you're fine.
the bank technically owns the house, but yeah.
I know. I explained the mortgage to my kids and they're like worried. I'm like, no, we own it. Don't worry. Stop. It's fine.
It's like yeah, watch what happens when you actually own it and you don't pay your property taxes. Then you really somebody else can always own it down the line.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I'm drinking a protein
Okay,
shake. That's it.
great. You look youthful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I am drinking Mexican hot chocolate. Not really, but in my theme because I try to do a theme. Have you had Mexican hot chocolate?
No, but it sounds really good. I don't know why, because I assume it has some
Spicy hot
like
chocolate.
cayenne or something. It has something spicy in it, right? Yeah, okay.
Oh my God, exactly that. So I actually just remembered this hilarious family story that has nothing to do with my story, but I had Mexican hot chocolate or like spicy hot chocolate, exactly that, in Colonial Williamsburg for some reason because they had it there as well. And obviously they got chocolate from the Yucatan in Mexico. But I was with my husband's family many, many years ago in um, in Colonial Williamsburg, and they gave us a spicy chocolate. And they said, "What are the ingredients?" And they were like, "Oh, it has like cayenne pepper, like you said, and turmeric, and like a couple other spices in it." And we all lost our minds laughing because we have this family story, and we do this in a Puerto Rican accent that I will not be doing because Juan has a Puerto Rican family, but his
Yeah, let's not
cousin
get canceled.
no, his cousin made a cake that was full of pot, like super high cake, and her mom ate a piece of it, and she was like, "This cake is delicious." And she was like, "What is in this cake?" And one's cousin was like, "Cayenne pepper and turmeric."
Ugh.
So we were like laughing so hard and said that that was the ingredients on the hot chocolate because we always say like, "This is delicious. What's in it?" And we're like, "Oh, it's cayenne pepper and turmeric." But like obviously her mom was just super high. And it was so funny. I mean, laugh about it all the time.
Was she trying to get her mom high?
No, it was like accident. She accidentally ate some of the
Oh,
cake.
there you go.
Like, and she was like, "Oh shit, my mom ate some of this weed cake." Anyway, so fun, so
Fun.
fun. So anyway, that's what I'm drinking. Imagine I'm drinking that, but not in Colonial Williamsburg, in the Yucatan. So I chocolate and hot chocolate, as you may know, is actually an ancient drink that was popular with the Mayan people. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Maya people and their history. But specifically, I'm going to talk about one specific motherfucker, Friar Diego de Landa, a Franciscan priest who burned most of the Mayan books and hundreds of their idols because of God. And this guy
Sweet.
is a piece of shit. So, let me drink some coffee before I do this because I have a lot to rant about.
Does he have the Friar Tuck haircut since his name is Friar?
A little bit. He's not great.
Okay.
So, you know, Fars, my two official stances on religion. One is, hey, this is America. Do whatever you want. Just don't hurt people. pointing at you, people who are hurting people. Stance 2 is fuck you, God is fake, grow up. Are you fucking serious? So I waffle between the two, depending on who I'm talking to. Specifically with the Catholic Church, does the Catholic Church have any redeeming qualities?
Oh my
I
God, yes.
like what?
They gave us Satanism. They gave us like the most morbid. Jesus Christ is a six pack. Like it is the most like sexual religion there is.
No, that is not a redeeming fucking quality for all the shit that they've
That is
done.
awesome. Well,
No.
okay, take away the pedophilia and
And no, nothing. So yesterday, my friend was telling me when we were at this trampoline park that she left her dog alone for a few hours and her dog threw up and pooped all over her house. And for me, I'm like, that's not enough redeeming quality for me to ever have a dog. And I know you love your dog, but like that's fucking gross. But she was like, but he's a good boy. So for her, his like goodness is makes it okay that she had to like spend 3 hours cleaning up puke, which is disgusting. And so for her, that's the redeeming quality that she wants to have a dog, even though it's shit and throw up all over everything. So I'm imagining the Catholic Church shitting and throwing up all over the whole fucking world, and they have no redeeming qualities. They've killed so many people, they've ruined so many lives, so many cultures, assaulted so many children for so long. The only thing I could possibly think of is the architecture because it's beautiful, and like maybe the Sistine Chapel because it's also beautiful. Um, And also, I know that Sinead O'Connor recently passed, and I remember when she tore up the picture of the Pope, I thought that was like an Irish thing because like Ireland's always like Catholic Protestant mad at each other, but it was actually specifically about the pedophilia in the Catholic Church. And I just want to say, recently in the news, the Archdiocese of San Francisco is going to declare bankruptcy because they've spent all of their money defending 500 molestation allegations. So
that's
like
more than zero.
little old ladies are giving their money to the Catholic Church for the Catholic Church to defend pedophiles.
Yeah, that's kind of nuts.
Okay, so it's bananas. Um, Plus all of their non-tax real estate and all that shit. So that's the worst, and that's kind of my overarching thought during this. But back to the Mayans and how I got here. I was on Instagram, like I am all the time, and I saw a book that was like in an ad reel that someone had done by an author named Marcos Antonio Hernandez. It's about Friar Diego, but he was like, this is about the monk that burned all of the Mayan history. It's called Where They Burn Books, They Also Burn People. I have it right here. It's great. So I have it here. I read the whole thing. Holding it up for you. I'll
Damn,
take a
that is
picture.
awesome.
Got a
That
dope ass
is that is
cover.
a dope cover.
Yeah. So I usually spend like 1 week, you know this, like researching something that someone spends their whole life learning about. So that's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
I have been doing this week. This book I've been reading for about a month. I took it on vacation with me. And then this week I started doing more about the Maya in general. But when I got this book, I was like a little disappointed because it's a fiction book. And I was like, oh, I thought it was going to be like his history, but it's so good. It's actually two books that he wrote. One of them is about Friar Diego specifically, and then one of them is about like a man nowadays, like a fiction story, and he weaves them together. It's really, really good. And I loved it so much that next week I'm going to be interviewing Marcos Antonio Hernandez and recording it for the podcast
Wait,
because I
seriously? How do
emailed him.
you?
I
And
emailed
he,
him and told him I love his book.
what?
Yeah, I'm super excited. I've told him my podcast is coming out on Monday. It's about your book. It's about Friar Diego. I'd love to talk to you more about it. He writes a ton about Latin American history, and so I'm stoked. So I'm gonna record next week with him, and I'll post that for y'all.
That's
Isn't that cool?
incredible, Taylor.
I know I'm stoked. Yeah, this book is great. Highly recommend. I'll post the link and all that.
You're so creative, Taylor. You came
Thank
up
you.
with the series concept with the volcano thing. You're doing interviews now. Like, man, I'm so like behind.
Thank you.
Way to
Uh,
go.
well, I'm very, very excited. And I think one of the things that is a very loose theme from this book, very clear, is burning books is always bad. Always, always, always. Um, so, I started reading this and then I started reading a lot about the Mayans. I actually had read a book last year about them because I was like, why don't I know anything about them? And I read it again this week because now I have more context of like reading this book. I also, in a non-academic turn, watched the 2009 movie 2012 with John Cusack. Have you watched that?
Oh, like 80 times.
Okay, it's great.
It's
I did not
amazing.
know how good it was going to be. I was like, I might not watch it again because I had a panic attack the entire time
Wait,
because
this was the first time you saw 2012?
yes, I
Whoa.
I think I thought I couldn't emotionally handle it like before because it was like it's like LA, like it's totally destroyed. The White House gets destroyed by a tsunami. It was so good.
It's awesome.
I really liked it. It was ridiculous, but I loved it. I wrote 10 out of 10. Just great. And that's because the Mayans had a calendar that essentially ended on December 21st, 2012. But spoiler alert, the world did not end. So we're still here.
Unless it's a
Um,
different calendar.
I know, well, who knows? I mean, we'll see what happens. So I have a lot of sources besides these things. So I listened to a podcast on History Hit about Maya warfare and sacrifice. Um, I what else? I listened to a Fall of Civilizations podcast about the Mayan collapse. I read the book The Maya by Michael D. Coe. There's a article I read about the village of Seren that I'll talk to you about later. And then I also read the introduction to Friar Diego's History of the Yucatan by William Gates. And that kind of gives you a history of like what we're talking about here, but I'll tell you about it in a second. I also happened to be at two museums recently, both the Natural History Museum in New York and in LA, where there were a bunch of Mayan like pottery and artifacts. And I knew I was going to do this, so I took a ton of pictures. So I'm also going to
Yes.
post those later too. So before I tell you exactly what Friar Diego did, I'm going to tell you a non-comprehensive and non-academic list of things that I learned about the Mayan people just this week by listening to books really fast.
Cool.
So the Mayan people lived in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mesoamerica. So right now that's like Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, like that area. Today, there are about 9 million Mayan people living in these areas. So there's still people who identify as Mayan, like indigenous to the land. It's also like a blanket term for a lot of the people that the Europeans encountered. There's obviously nuances. Like every culture, there were like little kingdoms and like different cities and different rulers and different types of people. But like the Maya is like a term that kind of encapsulates the whole thing.
Okay, makes sense.
Um, they lived in this area for thousands of years. So there's evidence of different eras. There's a classical era, like a neoclassical era, where there were huge kingdoms and huge cities. Some cities in this area could have held up to 90,000 people, like
Wait,
during this
Taylor,
time.
like Mexican people look like they look like Mexican people. Are those is that like the Mayan gene that makes them?
A lot of it is like the indigenous people who used to live there, and a lot of it is Mayan. Yes, not all of
So
it, of
okay,
course, but like a lot of it is. There's a lot of Mayan people. I think the most are in Guatemala right now, but there are a lot of people who have like Mayan ancestry in those places.
sweet. Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Um, so by the time the Spanish got there in the 1500s, things were not in a golden age. There was a lot of kingdoms and a lot of things that had actually collapsed. And the Mayan civilization, a lot of it had already had its heyday and it was on to like a different, whole different rulers, whole different things, because this area is not great for huge populations. It has periods of intense rain with periods of intense drought. So it's hard to like have big cities here. I mean, now it's easier because of technology, but like ancient times, it was hard to live there. The land does not lend to farming and agriculture. You can slash and burn maybe 3 times before the land is ruined and you have to move. It's on like a limestone bedrock, so it's hard to farm there. The primary food of the Mayan people was maize, which is like corn. You would eat it like in an oatmeal or a tamale. You would not have a tortilla yet until later. So like the ancient Mayans didn't have tortillas. Um, Also, something that I think is super fascinating is this area doesn't have any natural salt, and you need salt to live. So obviously, like in America, our fucking toothpaste has sodium. I don't know if that's true, but I'm guessing like sodium's in everything. Like we're not going to die from not having any salt, you know?
Right.
But you need salt to live. And ancient people all over the world figured this out, which I think is just like unbelievable. They figured it out that I mean it's not only in the Yucatan and in South America, it's like, all over the world. There's actually a book that I read that I'm remembering now, maybe like 15 years ago, called Salt, about how cultures had to go out and find ways to add salt to their food to be able to survive because they knew they couldn't live without it. And somehow they figured that out. So in the Yucatan, they would boil seawater or let it air dry. And
Oh,
there
that's
was a
brilliant.
huge, isn't that crazy? And there was a huge business of delivering salt all over the Yucatan via canoes and via canals, which is so cool.
I will say, I don't think it's that impressive that they figured out their body needed salt because you've been in situations before where you're like, you know your body needs something sometimes, and you don't even know why you know that. Like there are times when
But
you're like on a
how do you know that it's salts
because you've
without
been in the
knowing?
ocean. Because you've been in the ocean, you're like some of it got in your mouth, and
You
then
felt better.
and then you took your board shorts and you just like scraped off the salt into your
Oh,
mace.
okay. Oh, good.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for
yeah.
solving that ancient mystery for me. I appreciate it.
I'm
Maybe
a
I'll reread that salt book.
wise 39-year-old.
Totally. Um, anyway, I think that's super cool. We also know that they drank and ate chocolate. So like, that was something that they started cultivating very early. I actually went to the Cadbury's Museum in England, and it was all fun and games until you get to the part where they show the conquistadors invading, and you're like, it's like these like mannequins of conquistadors like stealing chocolate from the
Wait,
natives, and it's pretty
we
shitty.
got chocolate from the Mayans?
Yeah.
Whoa, okay. That's a
Hmm.
big get.
Yeah, it's
That's
a
a
big get.
huge get.
Yeah. We didn't have it before, got it from them, took it to Europe. Everyone loves it, obviously, because it's delicious. I also wrote that my trip to the Cadbury Museum wasn't fun because I was very cold and I was being a super bitch about being cold. It was the funny family story now that it's over. Um, Also, Hershey's company has actually funded some expeditions and science things to look into ancient pots they found to find like reference to chocolate being in them, like using carbon dating or whatever. So that's a good thing. It's the least they could do is help fund some Mayan excavations.
Yeah. Well, so basically, Easter and Halloween, two of America's favorite holidays, wouldn't exist but for the Mayans.
I mean, you can have those holidays without chocolate, but
I don't know.
it helps.
I guess
Valentine's
Peeps.
Day.
Yeah, I guess Peeps. I guess you can eat Peeps.
No,
Gross, but you can have them.
it's a great discovery. Good job.
Yes,
Love
yes.
it. Also in this area, fresh water is very hard to find. It gathers in a thing called the cenote. Do you know what a cenote
Yeah.
is? Yeah. So it's like a freshwater sinkhole that goes into underground caves, and that's where the water would stay. There is a Octonauts episode for parents who might watch the Octonauts. It's these animals, they're undersea explorers. It's great. But there's a whole um like longer episode called The Cave of Sakatun, where they go to the Yucatan and one of them gets lost in the cenote. And when they go to the cenote, there's these like Mayan carvings and there's two iguanas that are like on the side. And the iguanas go, not everyone who goes into the cenote comes out of the cenote. It's very
It's
fun.
terrifying.
And it's a great show. So several things about cenotes is they find human bones in the bottom of cenotes all the time. It could have been sacrifice, which we'll talk about later, but also people could have just fallen into it and drowned. And then also, I just wanted to make another blanket statement to never go in an underwater cave because you
Oh
will die.
God, yeah. That's my favorite pastime when I want to scare the shit out of myself is I watch YouTube videos of underwater cave diving. It is the
Oh my God.
scariest thing I can possibly like. I would. It's incredible how
There's
horrible
like,
way of it is to die.
oh my God, there's like four people in the world who are qualified, and you're not one of them. Everyone listening. It's
Yes.
terrifying. So that's where they got their water in these like big, scary sinkholes full of water. Um, there are a lot of pyramids and cities that we see in that area. And the way we see them now, they're like abandoned and there's like trees going through them. Like you can picture it, everyone. Um, but actually, a lot of the trees would have been cut down when they were being used. So you could have technically like stood on the top of one of those pyramids and you would have seen a city. You would have seen houses and people and markets and like tons of things happening. And the trees would have been cut down for a while. But now obviously they're back. And like I said before, I think with going back to Pompeii, going back to the Battle of Hastings, where all we have is that one banner to tell us what had happened, that tapestry. There's so much that we're missing because we're missing the fabric. And we're missing the wood, and we're missing the sounds, and we're missing the smells, and we're missing the color. So there's so much life in history that we don't get to see because only the stone is what survives, you
Right.
know? So it's just crazy. And I wish we could just like turn it on for a second and like see what it was like, and then like turn it off because it'd be scary and then turn it back on again. Because you'd be like, what am I doing? Oh my God, and then turn it off. I think that'd be so fun. And we also, Fars, you and I have talked about Ancient Aliens, and I'm not gonna pretend that I didn't love it when it first came out because it's such a fun idea. I love mysteries. I love that you're like, what is this stone relief trying to tell us? Because most of what we have is just stone relief carving. What does it mean? And it would be so fun if it was aliens, but obviously what we know now is a problem with Ancient Aliens is that what they're saying is that these people couldn't have done it. It must have been aliens. So like brown people couldn't have done it. Maybe it was aliens. Maybe it was like the Catholics thought maybe they're one of the lost tribes of Israel. That's like a story I don't know, but white people just saying that like brown people couldn't have built these things. But they did. Don't be an asshole.
I
That's all
didn't
I
even
have
know
to say.
this was a thing until someone told me, or you told
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
whatever,
Lindsay brought
somebody.
it up. Yeah. So that's a bummer because Ancient Aliens was fun, but no, the Mayans built them themselves, and there are probably about 1,000 pyramids in the Yucatan at different periods of time. And the reason that it's so freaking amazing is they didn't have the wheel or steel. So they did it all like with flint, like carving out limestone, which they said in one of the things, like, that's easy to do. I'm like, that sounds hard to me. Just like cutting a big block out of limestone with another rock. And they made concrete out of the dust and they mined jade and precious things. So they did all this stuff with pretty Stone Age materials. Like they didn't see steel until the Spanish got there.
Whenever I picture ancient aliens and the Mayans, I picture the entire anthology of Predator raising aliens to hunt, and that humans were the caretakers, or no, they were the slaves of the predators, and they cared for the alien babies. No,
I watched,
that
is that what
no,
happened?
they no. It was the aliens needed human prey, and so they used the Mayans as a sacrifice to feed to the baby, so they could grow up and become aliens who could be hunted by predators.
We definitely watched all the Predator movies recently because that new one came out with
Yeah,
like the girl. I should watch them all again. I don't remember, but I believe you.
when
Very,
I think of
very
ancient
fun.
aliens and Mayans,
Yes,
that's where my head goes.
that is so fun. Those movies are great. A
Yes.
delight. Um, so we also know that, during this is like, oh my God, during thousands of years of time, there's tons of wars, obviously, between different factions and different sections, and there's gruesome battles like there is over the whole fucking world for all of time. So the History Hit podcast I listened to with Dr. Elizabeth Graham was really interesting, and she has spent a lot of time in the Yucatan, like picking things up and like being an archaeologist and being dope. And she makes a point that I didn't really read anywhere else, but I thought was really interesting that she thinks that the human sacrifice aspect that you think of when you think of the Mayans is not true. She calls it fake news because she's a delight. And she also called it the Mel Gibsonization of history because like his movie Apocalypto, it makes him look very, very brutal because he's, well, it's a story, but also he's racist. So, it may not have been that way. We also don't know, but she has some good points. So when I brought this book, the Where They Burn Books, They Also Burn People on Vacation, some of my cousins were like, one guy was like, well, aren't the Mayans the ones that sacrifice people? And I was like, well, I we don't know. We don't know the details. Don't you want to know the details? Don't you wish we had the details? And he was like, yeah, I guess. And I was like, it's not like we would discount their history because we thought they had this brutality. Then you discount all history. There's fucking brutality everywhere, you
So
know?
where did it originate that they sacrifice people?
So here's what Dr. Graham said that I thought was really interesting. She said there's also things that could be lost in translation because there's a lot we have not translated. The word sacrifice means to make holy. So it could have been like an anointing of someone, or they're very religious. There's a lot of different gods. So it could have been like anointing people for different gods. It could have been just animals. And we saw that over and over again in Rome and Greece and all over the world where people sacrifice animals to gods for a good harvest, for rain, for whatever.
But why is it even
And
bad to assume that they would have sacrificed a human?
it's not bad. It's just like it might not be true.
Okay,
Like
all right,
that
yeah, yeah,
assumption might not be true, which is interesting because that assumption is like one of the first things that you think of, you know?
yeah, okay.
And it could have been, she says, like just in war. Like it could have been cutting people's heads off after war, which they did in France until like 1970s, you know.
They're
We did that.
literally doing that. The cartels and
Yeah,
ISIS are literally doing that today.
exactly. So if that's all you have of this culture, like that's what you'll think they did all the time, you know? Like lots of heads and spikes, lots of, you know, warnings like in Europe. They did that all the time. So she talks about like the rules of engagement of war. So when a Marine sniper comes back from war, we don't put him in jail for killing 100 people, you know, even though technically he murdered 100 people. So it's like, you know, we hear what we want to hear about this. So we see those stories and we see maybe like a carving of like someone holding a head and we think like that's what they did all the time. That might not be true and it's something that we might never ever know, really. But just think about if all you knew about us was like the Bible and the movie Oppenheimer, you'd be like, what the fuck?
I
You
mean,
know?
in the anthology, it's actually the predators who are sacrificing the humans. So the human sacrifice did happen, but it was just a different being that did it.
Who was hunting the humans? The predators or the aliens?
No, the predators were hunting the aliens, but they needed the aliens to be raised to grow up and become like big and healthy so they could have like a fair fight.
Got it.
Yes. And that's why in the movie, the second to last one, the predator makes friends with the humans because they were like, we got to kill these things because they're like rabid dogs. Like they're
Feel like they got
uncontrollable.
out of control. They're like it's like
Yeah.
raptors in Jurassic Park. Like they shouldn't have
Yes.
done it.
Yes. And then the T-Rex shows up, except the T-Rex, you know what, this is not working anymore. Let's keep going.
No, I like it. I like where we're going with that. I think we should have a movie night where we watch all eight of those or whatever. Um, the original ones also I feel like the um like making things invisible and stuff, it's not bad. Like for being like a
No.
20-year-old movie, you
No,
know?
Predator holds up way better than the original Alien and then Aliens. I know that it's a James Cameron thing, and everybody loves it, but you watch it again, you're like, this is so stupid looking. Like it
You
is
can like see the
obviously,
person. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, but whereas Predator holds up a lot better, I think.
Yeah. I definitely watched Alien and I was like, oh, that's a dude in an alien costume. But
So
like
obviously a dude in an alien costume, like a
but also it
Halloween
has like
costume.
but it has the best scene in the world where they're eating.
Oh yeah, that's
And
true. That's true.
that's like one of the best scenes in all cinema.
Chest bursters. Yep.
Okay, great. So anyway, the point is the Spanish wanted and needed them to be brutal. So who knows? But I just wanted to bring up that other idea that Dr. Graham had. We also know that the Mayan people knew a lot about science and math. They calculated Venus's orbit. They were specifically focused on Venus to like point to like they thought it was like 400 and it's actually like 399.98 or whatever, like whatever the calculation is. They were like very close. They also had a complicated calendar which we know about, and that ended in 2012, maybe. And they had a ton of books for thousands of years, but also because of the climate, a lot of the books didn't make it because they would get like moldy and like rot away. So there's also that. But they were, had science, they had math. They also had obviously a very complex religion, many gods for different things. They had a couple of general creation myths where other people were made and they were made of clay and it didn't work. And then they were made of brick and it didn't work. And then there was a great flood and then they made our people. So the great flood myth is really fun because there's also probably a controversial show called Ancient Apocalypse that I really like. And that's the one that we were watching and we were like, this is so fun. Every culture has a flood myth, like what happened. And then Joe Rogan was on it and we were like, oh, I think I told you that
Joe
before.
Rogan is not a bad person. Like it is.
Yes,
This
he
is like this
is.
crazy. No, it's is it. Okay, whatever. We don't. I'm not going.
We were
I'm
talking
not
about, but
doing
I
this
was like,
again.
oh, that this show loses its
It is
credibility.
always people who've literally never listened to him who are like, he's a right wing Republican crazy person. It's like, no, he's not. Like nobody who's listened to him thinks that.
Right, that's the point. Okay. Anyway, so also the ending of 2012, the movie was very much like the flood and they all went back to Africa. It was quite delightful. So we know that they had royal courts. There was also royal etiquette, which I didn't think about until recently, that etiquette is made to make poor people feel bad about themselves because you couldn't like sneak into court because you wouldn't know how to follow the rules. So they like made it clear that like only certain people could do certain things. That was something that they did to keep the poors out. And some of the things, so those are some of the things that we know. There's a lot more to that. thousands of books that you could read now about it, of people who devote their lives to the Mayan culture. But here's one really fucking cool thing. Some of the ways we know about Mayan culture is one, in 1864, a Dutch engineer named S.A., the letters, Van Braam, found a carving called the Leiden plaque that has a calendar and some helpful things in it that helped translate some things, and that was really, really helpful to like start understanding more about them. And then the really cool thing, in El Salvador, there is a city called Suren. And as luck would have it, in 595, guess what destroyed the city of Suren?
A flood.
A volcano.
Whoa.
It is the North American Pompeii that you have never heard of. On
Your series is
an
going to
au-
be another, it's going to be 8 now, isn't it?
oh my God, on an August night, the Loma Caldera volcano erupted. 5 meters of ash covered the area. From excavations, it was buried until a bulldozer found it in 1978. So buried and forgotten, just like Pompeii and Herculaneum were, they found dinner on the table in people's houses. It's a small village. They found 4 households so far, 1 sweat bath, a civic building, a sanctuary, and fields. They can tell that people had kitchen gardens. So they out in their backyard, they had gardens that had beans, squash, cotton, agave, avocados, guava, cacao, all sorts of things like growing right outside their house. In one of the houses, there's 4 buildings. There's a garden. There's a thatched, like evidence of a thatched roof, columns. There's storage jars. One had fibers and seeds with a spindle by it, so they would have used it to like make fabric in there. One of the kitchens has shelves and has beans and other foods like in containers. They can tell that chili peppers hung from the rafters. So super cool that we
Yeah,
have that little bit of a look into it. Obviously, people died, but it's still really cool that volcanoes have given us these glimpses into the past, you know?
I'm into
So
it.
super cool. Okay, now do you feel like you have a really good overview of the Mayan culture?
I think I have appropriate context.
Okay, perfect. So we know a lot of those basics for various reasons. We found some things, we've translated some things, we have some ruins. The rest of what we know is because of Friar Diego de Landa. In the William Gates, who wrote the introduction to Friar Diego's book, Yucatan Before and After the Conquest, said 99% of what we know is because of Friar Diego, and 99% of what we lost is also because of him.
Whoa.
So this motherfucker, I feel like I don't say that enough, but I really feel it in this instance, was born Diego de Landa Calderon on November 12th, 1524, in Guadalajara, Spain. In 1541, he became a Franciscan friar, and in 1549, he arrived in the Yucatan. He mostly lived in Izmal, which is now in Mexico. So he arrived specifically to convert the native people to Catholicism.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm with you.
So the first, so just a smidge about the Spanish conquest. The first asshole to show up was, of course, Christopher
Christopher
Columbus
Columbus.
on his 4th trip. So he showed up. They brought disease. Some villages were destroyed by disease before the Spanish even got there because it like spread so fast. People would just like
Yeah.
of their normal trade routes, their normal communication, like it spread so fast. So many people died. They also brought weapons the natives had never seen. Like they brought steel. They hadn't seen swords. They hadn't seen steel-tip arrows. They hadn't seen these things that could like destroy someone in such a quick way. They also just killed and destroyed because they're trying to find gold, which is like a gross oversimplification of what happened, but it was
I thought it
terrible.
was the Fountain of Youth.
That's in there, but like mostly gold.
Okay.
Yeah, which it doesn't even really have. It's not, there are no streets of gold in
Yeah.
anywhere. Um, so some of the Spanish were there to get rich, and those who did, they enslaved the natives, obviously. They also brought slaves from Africa. Like it was, bad. And they used the natives to help with their mining and farming and whatever. And then some of the Spanish were there to convert the natives, and this was mostly the Franciscan friars. The friars would go on foot all over the Yucatan. So these fuckers would like yell the Bible at people and like think that it's working. And it reminds me of that guy in the boat that tried to go to that island, remember that we talked about before? who was like holding up his Bible, and then like they
Oh yeah,
in
yeah,
India
yeah.
and they like shot him because like I don't I there's a lot of it that does not compute in my brain, but just like yelling at someone in Spanish and holding the Bible who has no idea what you're talking about, like what do you think is going to happen?
I
Like,
hope they were mostly shot.
and a lot of it is people were like, so I wrote, it boils my blood. Like, it just makes me so mad. Like, what do you think is happening? You're coming to people's houses being like, here. And you're like, what? I don't understand you. What is this? Like, what is
It
happening?
is a uniquely awful trait of Christianity because like if
Yeah.
you think about it, like other religions, well, I don't know. I guess Islam does try to convert, but like Judaism is probably the best version of it, where it's like, no, we're not
They don't
trying to
care.
convert anybody. Like if
Yeah.
you think that you this is your faith, then you can come to us, but nobody's out there trying to get you. It's so weird.
It's so weird. And I mean, I try to be like, I don't know, I try to think maybe if I truly believed in my heart that someone was going to live in eternal hellfire for all of eternity, if they didn't do what I told them to do, then like maybe I try to save people. Like but I don't have that. That is bananas to me. I would never believe that. So
Yeah,
I can't
that
empathize with
missed
it.
me. That missed me entirely.
Yeah. So I don't know, but um it sounds like so a lot of the natives did eventually go to church. Like they built big monasteries and they would teach them Spanish and like read from the Bible, often in Latin, of course, so like even more confusing.
But you
Um,
gotta, Taylor. One thing that like it just occurred to me is like you also gotta look at it from the perspective of like the people who are like receiving that message. Here you have these folks who show up who
mhm.
dress in this finery, well developed clothes, and they have books, which are probably a new technology, a new concept to them. They have weaponry that looks out of this world.
Mhm.
How much different would it be if like aliens showed up to us and were like, "Hey,
No,
like
totally.
guys, this is how you are not going to burn forever." Like you don't
Yeah.
like it would be. Most of the time, I look at this from a perspective of like, "Fuck those people for doing that to those people," because we can see objectively the bullshit of it all. But if you
Hmm.
look at it sometimes from the perspective of like them, it's like you can see why they're like, oh, we're not like being. This is not like a punishment to us. This is a blessing. Like these guys are giving us something that we would never have on our own. I don't know, just a different perspective, I guess.
No, I know, but they also like took advantage of that. That they had more stuff. And the friars like didn't have all the gold, but they had the like ideas. And a lot of the native people were like, cool, another god.
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah,
They were like, oh, I have a soul. Great. I didn't know I had a soul. That's awesome. I'll pray to your God for my soul, but I'm going to pray to this guy for rain and this guy for corn, like I have been doing for millennium.
right, right,
And you're like, great. They're like, this is no big deal. But the Catholics hated that because there's only one God. So
right.
they were like, you can't do that. So Friar Diego would walk for days and days, finding people to convert, bringing them back to the monastery. He said that he saw human sacrifices and he once stopped a sacrifice of a boy. And I don't know if I believe him. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. He needed that to happen. You know, I have a random blow point that's also he smelled terrible
How do we
because
know
he was
that?
wearing because he was wearing like a Franciscan frock in the middle of Mexico.
Yeah, that's not gonna. It's gonna wash
Um,
out easy.
so he also is not just a normal priest, Catholic priest, he was also someone who believed that Christ was coming back in the year 1600. So he needed to convert as many people as possible to be ready for that. For a whole new age where the Catholic Church would dismantle and it would be a new age, and he needed to be at like the top of the whatever the pole for that. And the way he would do that is converting the most Maya people and like native people as possible. Spoiler alert, Christ is never coming back. He never left. It's not real. He didn't come back in 1600. He's not coming back now. So, but he was doing this for this idea, this extra crazy idea that he had. So they would do things like burn villages to get them to move closer to the monastery, like trying to save people as possible. But in that way, like tons of people died. They didn't have enough food. They didn't have enough water. You can't just people live in places so because they can survive there, but
Yeah,
so
yeah,
they
yeah.
would just like forcibly move them. So tons of people died. And he was so like he has so much religious fervor that they did, like you said, they did trust him. They did say, like, this guy must have something. Like, this guy's crazy about this God He must, maybe he knows something, you know? So some of like the Mayan priests and religious people showed him their books and showed him their idols and showed him the histories of their people that they had written down. And Friar Diego was like, oh, obviously these are written by the devil and this is all the devil. Like the devil has time. Like he has time to make up a whole religion. Give me a break.
I
Um,
wish I had like an ounce of the confidence fucking idiots have all the time.
oh my
All the
God.
time.
I got a magnet, and I put it in the fridge that says, carry yourself with the confidence of a mediocre white man.
Ser-
That is my motto.
What's that? What's that Bukowski saying? It was my favorite saying. It was like the problem with the world is that the stupid people, the confident people are too quiet and the stupid people are too loud. Or I forgot what it was. It was like it
No,
was very,
totally.
it was very good. But it's that concept of like just like man, you are so confident, you have to be right. But it's like it's always a dumb one. It's never the right
I
ones that
know.
are like that.
I know. So anything that isn't God is the devil. So the devil made all these other gods. The devil made all these idols, and idols means like little like wooden, stone, clay statues of their other gods that they've had for, thousands of years. So he starts to hear that people are still praying to their old gods and just added God to their like prayer book, and he loses his fucking mind. And so Friar Diego has an inquisition where he ties people up by their arms and has weights put on their waist and on their feet, and so their arms come out of the socket, their legs come out of the socket,
Jesus.
until they confess that they have idols at their homes. So, like, yes, I have a book. Yes, I have a couple of statues that I pray to. And then they would have to, like, like any fucking torture, just say whatever he wanted until he let them go. And then afterwards, he was like, no one was really hurt. Like, fuck you, they were. They were absolutely hurt. People were
Yeah.
absolutely hurt from this. And so he made everybody go home and go to their family cave where they have everything that their families had for hundreds of years and go to their villages, go to these ancient temples, go to these places and bring everything to him. Every book they could find, because there were books, every idol they could find and put them in a pile. And on July 12th, 1562, he held a ceremony where he said 27 books, but they think it might have been thousands of books and at least 5,000 idols. So he burned
Whoa.
all of the history of the Mayan people, not just their religion,
Man.
but their history.
How did he
Uh,
have the authority for this?
he just said he was the good question. He was like one of the highest ranking people in like the friarness, like they had like leaders and stuff,
No, I mean,
like the
like,
friars.
why did Mayans feel strongly about their own belief structure and want to like, could they have challenged him or?
I think they were afraid. They were afraid.
Yeah,
Like he had these weapons and he was like, and they were also like confused about God. Like
right.
he just went in, he like scared the shit out of them and then he hurt them and then he stole their stuff and then he burned it. Um, he said, quote, we found a large number of books in these characters, meaning the Mayan characters, and, and as they contained nothing in which were not to be seen as superstition and lies of the devil, we burned them all, which they, the Maya, regretted to an amazing degree, and which caused them much affliction. And I wrote, fuck you.
Yeah,
Fuck you. Oh my God. So he also believed that this would bring Christ back faster. I wrote, fuck you twice because
yeah.
so awful. And he did get sent back to Spain to justify what he did because people were like, that was a little intense. Like you maybe shouldn't have done that. And while he was in Spain, he wrote the history of the Mayans. And his book is the only book we have that has the history of the Mayan written down from his perspective, from what he heard before he burned everything.
An account of the things of Yucatan.
Hmm.
God, he looks
So
annoying.
he's the worst. So he actually spoke their language and knew their writing enough. He wrote an alphabet of the Mayans. It's a mix of hieroglyphics and sounds. It wasn't totally correct and actually didn't get really cracked until a Soviet code guy did it in the 1950s, which is cool. Um, so Friar Diego's dumb memory is the best thing we have. So we're lucky that he wrote it down in the same way that it's his fault that he had to write it down,
Makes sense. I get that.
you know? And it's all through his fucked up lens of being like, this must be the devil. So he was sent back to Spain by the bishop of the Yucatan to go on trial for his illegal inquisition. And the Council of the Indies, whatever that means, was like, they condemned it, but in 1569 they absolved him of his crimes. The bishop of the Yucatan died, and he went back and became the second bishop of the Yucatan, where he continued to like be in charge of the friars and be in charge of the Catholic conversion, and he died there. When did he die? He died in the Yucatan
He
on
died in 1579.
in 1579, back in the land that he helped to destroy.
No, interesting guy.
Hmm.
He did a lot. He accomplished a lot.
Ugh.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
just the worst.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunate. I brought this up to you in an episode forever ago. I don't even remember which it was, but I was going through this phase where I would like watch these like narco stuff, like these cartel videos and
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
real life stuff, not like the show of like
Hmm.
what they would do to each other and all that kind of stuff. And I think I like phrased you. I was like, dude, it's crazy. It's like these people are like from like Mayan ancestry. They're like
Yeah.
warriors, and like they're doing cutting each other's heads off over like $5 of swag weed, and like but like that is the downstream impact of like colonization when you take
Hmm.
because like so somebody said something interesting to me once, which was like well, like how like there really isn't like an identifiable American culture. How like
Hmm.
being raised American, there's like swaths of it. Like there's different
Hmm.
variations of it, and so having some sort of like a rooted a foundational grasp of a culture is like a thing that humans generally need to feel part of something.
Hmm.
And when you take that away through things like Christianity and like it's just the most perverse thing. Like
Yeah.
you're it's like you're taking away like someone's ability to identify with their mom, dad, grandparents, their land. They're like so perverse.
Yeah. It's pretty awful. And it's just my biggest crisis is like we don't know what happened in most of history. And then like the fact that it was like at our fingertips and then destroyed, I think is so crazy.
And like here's the, okay, like when oh my God, what was it? When it was when ISIS was rolling through Syria, destroying all those statues and the burning the library. It's like humans never change. Like we are uniformly, regardless of like where we are in the world or culture or religion, uniformly, this is what we do.
Hmm.
Like see someone and think, oh, we got to change them. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, people can just be different. That's okay too.
That's okay too.
Um,
That's cool. I don't know. I
well,
like it.
Taylor, thank you for sharing. It
Thank you.
sounds
I'm
like
excited
you're.
to not worry about this anymore. I've just been
I'm
so worried about
excited
it
for
all
your
week.
interview. I'm excited
Me
about your
too.
interview.
Yeah, I can't wait.
That's so cool. Like you're being so creative with this stuff. We are going to start heavily pushing things on the podcast front even more. Taylor was kind enough to order a bunch of stickers that we're
Hmm.
gonna. I'm gonna. I guess I should have them by next weekend. And so next weekend, if you're in Austin, be on the lookout because if you're at a coffee shop, I'm gonna be giving you a sticker and asking you to download the podcast. So
Every coffee shop in Austin.
when I was at my conference last week, I was at the bar and I got two or three different people to download the podcast.
Yes. Great
So
job. Great
there you
job.
go.
Yeah, my listener mail this week is coming from me. I'm gonna just I have my contact list and I was like, how do I like kind of cleaned it up. Like I have a list of everyone I've ever met, and then I like exported from my Gmail, and then I deleted some of the ones that I know aren't real or like I don't know them really, and then I have like 600 people left that I like might might remember me. So I'm gonna start emailing them in batches and have them sign up for Substack because I feel like no one's looking at my social media,
It's not
or
true.
they just hate me and they don't care. I don't know.
No, everybody loves you, Taylor. Is our
So
Insta following growing?
a little bit. We're working on
Okay.
it. We are working on it.
Oh my
I
God.
also, Maggie, our friend Maggie, sent me a post from someone who is posting about history, how history is just gossip for nerds, and that he already covered like in the quick little clips, like Eleanor and Oscar Wilde. So I DM'd him and we're laughing about history together as well. So I'm hoping to like make friends who have bigger followings and talk about the same things because we talk about the same things and they're really fun.
I would
So
love to make friends with anybody that is in this line of topics that we're going through.
yeah.
Cool. Well, Taylor, we will go ahead and cut this off.
Thank you,
And
Faris.
yeah, no, thank you. And I will join you back here momentarily. Thanks for
Awesome.
listening,
Thanks.
everyone.
Woo.
Bye.